Between the Covers, the show for readers and writers and lovers of books. I'm Stephanie, and I'm a publisher at Red Penguin Books, where we work with authors of all types and genres. So if you have a book in your head or on your computer, or maybe even 300 pieces of loose leaf shoved in a drawer, visit redpenguinbooks.com and unleash your inner author. I am beyond excited today to be joined by three authors from all over the country who have undoubtedly unleashed themselves. Visiting us today is Erin Hatzikostas, who wrote You Do You-ish. I am just in love with this book cover, and you're going to love meeting Erin and learning all about how to unleash your authentic superpowers. Also visiting us from the West Coast, Tanya is bringing us The Sunshine and Rising Up. And Rising Up is not just a book, it's actually an entire mission going on, and you definitely want to be a part of that. And then finally, Joanne Angel Barry Cologne will talk to us about healing with numbers. I can't wait to hear all about that. And she is the author of several books. So we're going to hear about a bunch of different things and then healing with numbers. So first, please welcome Erin Hatzikostas. Erin, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. This is going to be fun.
Oh, I'm thrilled, and I'm in love with your cover, and I'm in love with You Do You-ish. This is great. Tell us a little bit about how the book got started and how you got started in writing.
Well, so first of all, it's so funny you say that, right? Because writing a book is a lot of work. There's a lot of pain, right? There's a lot of ups and downs, and but I feel like the words just flowed out of me, but the cover, the name, and the subtitle, like, so glad you like it, but I was a freaking hot mess because it's changed. My book coach didn't like there's so much behind it. But just to tell you a little bit about what You Do You-ish is all about is, I was a corporate CEO. I had this successful career, and I decided actually to retire early. And I remember many times having almost this guilt feeling that I don't want to say my career was easy, because that's really annoying. I worked hard, right? I did some of the right things, but I never felt like I totally sacrificed like so many other people. I would see colleagues that would, give up their vacation because, something hit the fan and they had to cancel it. Or I would, I had friends that moved their family 3 times in 4 years to advance their career. And I never, was willing to do whatever it took, but I was having success. And it wasn't until I left that I got pinned with this like authenticity badge. And of course, it's a word I'd heard before, but not something when I was in my career that came up until sort of I had this retirement. I just kept coming through and through and through. We'll miss your authentic leadership. And what I realized was that I didn't just give myself permission to be authentic, right? Like there's so many out there that like, oh, like bring your whole self to work, which is wonderful, but it's kind of BS. What I realized was somewhere along the way, kind of subconsciously, I started using authenticity as my secret weapon. I actually purposely used authenticity to connect more easily with people, to stand out amongst a sea of people, right? Stand out to other executives, to gain followership. I mean, part of the success formula, right, is getting the best talent to follow you. And so, when I started Be Authentic Inc., it was about spreading authenticity. But when I started to write the book, it had been about a year. And when I sat down and wrote the pieces out, I started to realize like, this isn't just a permission, it's actually a strategy. And so that's what I do in You Do You-ish. I teach people about the nuanced and the rich definition of authenticity that we overlook, and then how you can actually use it to have what I say is a big career without compromising everything else.
That is so amazing. And to have that big career without the compromise. I mean, that's the key, is to be true to yourself and to be able to find that way. And you have the strategy. That's amazing.
Yeah.
People, one-on-one groups. I mean, God, when you have a message like that, you need to get it out.
Yeah, so I do whatever it takes. I'm still building my business. I've been in this business for a couple of years. I just did a TEDx talk in the fall called Why You Don't Have to Compromise for Your Career. So I got to stand on the red dot, actually in New York, Farmingdale, New York. I know you're in New York. So out in Long Island, which, you know, is funny. Everybody's like, what's it like to do a TEDx? And I'm like, you should ask, what's it like to do a TEDx in COVID, right? So there was a unique spin to being authentic to 3 camera guys and a photographer, right? Because we had a very limited audience. So that was difficult. But yeah, I'm trying to get my message out there anyway I can. And what I often tell people, I actually really started with the consumer side. You know, although I have so many relationships on the big corporate side, I spent so much time there. I have lots of friends that are in the C-suite in various companies. But I said, it's kind of like if it was back in the 40s and we were trying to defeat Hitler, right? Well, there's 2 options. We can go to Hitler and his men and sit down with them and be like, stop the shit. Like, we got to do this a different way. Or we can build an army to defeat him. And that's kind of how I think about the authenticity movement. It's about building an army of people that, you know, one by one, that hopefully spreads like wildfire. I talk a lot about that in the book, how authenticity is so contagious that eventually this isn't a top-down change of the corporate workplace to become more authentic and not be so stuffy and have so much BS in it. But really, it's a bottom-up that all of a sudden this army forms and swarms corporate America, and we start to have a workplace that looks and feels a lot happier and a lot more diverse and a lot more authentic than it does today.
Awesome. How do you think this whole lockdown pandemic has it? I feel like it's made people look more at that authenticity issue and want to be, you know, their true selves in the workplace. Is that something, it's a positive kind of in a spin?
Yeah, I do. I think it's definitely a tailwind. You know, I think we've been forced, right? Like all of this, you know, everybody's in everybody's home. You see celebrities with kids running past. This concept of authenticity has sort of been forced upon us because we got to a point where we were pinched so tight that it's just like, blah, right? My hope and my goal, though, is to come out of, just like everybody, we want to come out of this pandemic and we want to take the good from the old, the good from the new, and we want to, you know, we want to sort of curate this new world that takes the best of both worlds, right? And, you know, I think that's why it's important that we talk about authenticity consciously. That we don't slip back into our old ways, that we take the good that has been this forced authenticity and think about it, not just again as a permission, but like, what was good about it? Did you connect with people better? Did you sell more things because you didn't hold back from the authenticity you were sort of forced to have? And then know that you can translate into this, you know, next world that we hopefully walk into soon.
Awesome. Tell me something. You said when you were writing the book, on the one hand, you said it just poured out of you, but then you said you were, you know, with your book coach even about the cover, and thank goodness you like it. You know, tell us a little bit about process.
My God, process. So, I love talking about this. So I'm a first-time author, you know, self-published, math major. So my parents are probably, they're reading it actually right now. They're probably like, oh, Jesus, this girl who got like, you know, said so many words wrong and barely could write anything, you know, because she was a math geek, is writing a book. You know, the first thing I'll say is find your person. You know, I looked at so many different services. Unfortunately, I didn't know about yours, Red Penguin, because I feel
like what?
Right. But you know, I looked at the bro marketing services to be totally authentic, right? Some of them even said to me, you know, when I asked what kind of editor would I be, you know, matched up against, they're like, oh, just kind of anybody. And I am so happy I found a book coach that was my person. You know, she's the kind of person that when I said, Patty, I want to take it a little bit to the edge, she was like, she'd push me over, right? Like she gave me permission. And it's funny, I'll never forget our first couple of meetings. She was like, Jesus, girl, like you are going like crazy, content's flowing, the voice is great. And I said to her, because I know myself, right? Like we're all probably, you know, hit our 40+ year mark where we get to all of a sudden understand ourselves very well. And I said, I am a star student now. You just wait. I will be a hot mess at some point. And part of that's because I know I love creating and starting. I'm not as good at finishing. Like I like it actually when it's messier. But I had this moment, and I actually write it. So the instead of a preface, it's called preface-ish, because in the fall, when we're starting to get to the place where it's getting serious, like no more fun and games, like we got to put together a book with the table of contents and all the things. And I wrote her an email on a Sunday, and I said, I've hit a massive wall. And you guys can probably all appreciate, and your listeners, if you haven't gone through this yet, like it will come where you have to do the hard things. You've got to reorder sections. You've got to delete, like, I can't tell you how much stuff I wrote that never made it to the book. Like you've got to really dig deep and take all that creativity and get it into a flow, and that whole editing process, it's challenging. And so I sat with her on Tuesday at our coaching call, and it was so interesting because, of course, like typical coaching, at first we went through like, what's your problem? Like all the stuff that's on the surface. And then she finally said, Erin, what's really eating at you? And I'll never forget, I was sitting right here. I looked out the window. I remember, and she's like, and I'm like, just give me a second, because I don't know. And I waited for it to come. And I finally told her, I said, I'm at that place in the book process where I'm supposed to do certain things, right? Like the rules are really coming down, right? Like you have to, because I don't know. She's like, you have to have a preface. And then at the end you do a blah and you do acknowledgement, right? You got the front matter, the back matter. And I said, I have such a hard time when I get to this place where I should. And then that's when we knew all along I was writing an authentic book. Our goal was always not just to write about authentic, but have it feel authentic. And she's like, well, what if you didn't do the preface like that? And what if you did whatever the heck you wanted in the back matter and all these things? And I was just like, oh, I can. And, the irony, of course, is, in chapter one of my quotes is, you should not do something because you hate the way it was done before. You actually can do it your own way, right? But this is what we do. We learn and relearn our own lessons constantly. And, so she gave me that permission. And I give that permission to anybody that's listening, whether you're writing about authenticity or you're writing about toolboxes. Like, you don't have to do it the way everyone's done it before. People actually like picking up books that shake it up, that are refreshing. I mean, look at Untamed, which we all know that doesn't even have a subtitle, right? And so once I was given that permission and was allowed to like basically do what I was coaching everybody else in the book to do, then I had the surge I needed to get through the final process and bring it across the finish line.
Awesome. I saw Tanya smiling and like, yes. And, I think it's a little bit scary when you're writing a book, and this goes for all of you on our show today, about, kind of being your best self but you have to do that on those pages too. You're writing about authenticity, and now it's kind of scary that you have to be authentic on every single page. That's a high bar for yourself. Awesome that you got through and you got the book done. How did it feel when the book was in your hand?
Oh my gosh, amazing. So, I got the proof copy a couple of weeks ago, and, the real magic has been, so much like most people do, I gathered an early reader group. They actually just the poor souls got a PDF copy right before it was launched. And this is another thing about the process that people need to know or can relate with if they've written a book before. It's messy. And so I hadn't actually read my final book until it was like the last turn I was doing of the interior design. You find all the big errors and you go through and you find all the big, and then finally where it was getting to a place where it was fairly stable. And I actually read it, right? Because you have so many, I had my book coach editing it. I had a copy editor. Then you get it back and you've got like 200 comments that you need to take care of. You're like just sweating your way through those. You're not reading it, right? From front to back. And actually, I have to be honest, the first time I sat down, I remember writing my book coach and going, oh my God, this is actually good. like I really, and people are like, oh, you knew it would be, and then I got to tell you, Stephanie, I sent it out to the early readers, and I held my breath, as probably we all do, right? Like nobody else had read it but these two women in the writing industry. And that next morning, my first reader texted and said, "Oh my God, I finished it already. I couldn't stop reading it." And ever since then, the feedback that's been coming in has been blowing my mind. Like, I had one reader, I have a whole section, part 2 is about sucky songs that you sing to yourself. And he said it was 4 a.m. and he goes, "Erin, I turned on my success songs," which is what I call them. And he said, "I put on socks because I have neighbors, and I danced in my kitchen for an hour and a half."
Oh.
And, I've had men, women, just how much it connected with them. Apparently it's really funny too, which I say apparently because after you're writing forever, like your humor tends to like wane, right? You're like, oh, when you hear it the first time, it's funny. Like, I kind of got sick of my snarky humor. So I have to tell you, I thought this week, this is launch week for me, that it would be like staring at the numbers and looking at the metrics. And I am just flying on the feedback and the excitement and the frequency that everybody else is giving back to me. And I couldn't be happier. So now it's just like, it's off to the races.
Oh my God. That's so fabulous.
Yeah.
Enjoy the ride. Enjoy every minute of it. You deserve
Thank you.
You absolutely deserve it. So tell us a little bit about who should be out there as soon as wait till the show's over, and then who should be out there buying your book. Like, describe your reader.
Yeah, so it's funny. I wrote it primarily for my target market is women in their 30s, 40s, 50s that have probably had a taste of the corporate life in particular, and the BS that sort of comes with that, and have really started to hold themselves back in their career, or feel like that goal, that big dream that they once had, isn't attainable. What I'm finding though, I had somebody read it that's a teacher, and she's like, "This isn't about your career. This is about your life." I've had the gentleman that was dancing. He left corporate years ago, and he's now in real estate. And it's really revived him. But I would say, and anybody that wants a shot in the arm for their career and wants to shake things up and is frustrated, whether they're looking for a new job, they're currently in a job, somebody that wants more than just permission to be authentic, but a strategy, and is just sick of the same old blah blah blah, executive presence and lean in and all that crap, and is just looking for a fresh approach. I think they'll really enjoy it.
Fantastic. Oh, well, I'm so happy you're here, and I'm so unbelievably proud of you. And a TEDx. Wow.
Thank you. And in true authentic fashion, I don't know if you saw, but my 12-year-old daughter just crawled through the office to get something and back out. So you know how these things go. That's the life we're living in.
Daughters, my cat will walk across at some point. It's the fun of being, home and Zooming for this past year.
Yeah, it is.
Life is different. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
A little bit younger, shall we say, Tanya Ross is the author of Rising Up. Now, Rising Up is just such a interesting book because it's a dystopian novel, but it's so much about empowering people. And that's what Tanya is about, empowering young women. So we'll go a couple of decades younger right now. And
yeah, a couple of decades. Yeah. So Rising Up is, like you said, it's completely different in terms of genre from what Erin was talking about. And yet at the core of it, it deals explicitly with being authentic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. Because the people in this novel live in a perfect city where they think that it's okay to not be authentic. They have to be happy all the time, and their emotions are monitored from the time they get up until the time they go to bed to determine how happy they really are. And so the monitor gauges, how they talk to people, their facial expressions, their blood pressure, everything is completely monitored, and those emotions are picked up. So the people that can do a good job at being happy and basically really feel that inside them all the time, they're the ones that get to rise up in the society. So they go from, from starting at the bottom where everybody begins as a 5-year-old wearing this device called an alt, and then they wear it the rest of their lives. So as they prove themselves, they can move from one status level to the next. And if they don't maintain their status level, then they move back down. And it literally means they're moving from one house to another, because communities only live together. They're wearing a certain color of clothing all the time to designate what level of status they are. So the people on the bottom that are the white level ones, they're really considered kind of like the trash of society because they can't get it together. And then if people do not do what they're supposed to do, they're counseled in extreme ways. And then they are frequently arrested as being violators of the emotional climate that they have to maintain. And they are thrown out of the city into a, barely livable, barely sustainable place where no one wants to go. So the choices for these people are, pretty extreme. Either they toe the line and do what they're required to do, which they're happy to do, or they suffer the consequences of that misbehavior. So no one really is authentic in this world, and the characters find out that that is pretty difficult as they come across challenges. So,
And it's interesting because it's fiction, maybe.
I said I was thinking it sounds like corporate America.
Exactly. It's, she wrote a novel, kind of, but and it's through the fiction that people often, sometimes people like to get hit on the head with nonfiction, Erin telling them. Sometimes it's through fiction, and this is the great thing about fiction writers with a mission. Not all fiction writers have a mission, but Tanya, you most certainly do, which is to get us to see. Sometimes we get lulled into it because we think we're reading about them and this fictitious dystopian world, but then we realize, yeah, that's kind of me too.
Absolutely. I mean, how dedicated are we to our smartphones? We're fine with putting on a smartwatch that measures just about everything except our emotions. We're all good with that. We're good with the invasion of technology to a very extreme degree. And so it's not so far off that this society was created under the guise of making sure that we don't have horrible things happening like war and crime and things that could be prevented if only people had a better mindset. So it's especially poignant for kids these days because they are so addicted to social media. And I'm not going to discount myself because I fall into the same, trap. But young people, especially, they want to make sure that they appear correctly on their social media, that they portray the right things. They want to make sure that their selfies are great. All of the things that are not that far away from what would be happening in a society such as this. So it's kind of a wake-up call, and I hope that it's something where kids do see themselves reflected in the overreach of technology and how far it could go to manipulate them in their everyday lives.
Oh, you are so right about that. I mean, it's funny. We worry about whether the invasion of, I'll call it Big Brother, from 1984. Yet we just signed up for it, man. We just all carry these around, and we just signed up for our entire lives being owned by companies and other groups. It's
totally, like, without even thinking, right? And and that's what the people in this book do. And it's like, it's okay for them. They're happy to do it because they then have a secure place to live where, they're going to be able to rise up and get somewhere in society. So so yeah, it's a pretty good mirror of what's happening in our world, and you know, something that I hope that kids can identify with.
Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about, I know your events, like the world's events, are probably on hold as far as in-person things, but I know you were doing a lot of outreach with younger people and things like that. Tell us a little bit about that and what we hope for the future, because the future is soon, we hope.
Right, right. Well, I was a public school teacher. I taught middle school for 32 years. So I know my target audience really well, having spent so many days with them and so many conversations with them. And so one thing I love to do is to be able to go back into the classrooms or go back into an auditorium where I have a live student audience and be able to present, you know, this story and, you know, the themes of this story, and hopefully, you know, touch some nerves even at the very beginning, where the kids are like, you know, really, that's what happens to those people, you know, and start to think about what their own consequences for being a slave to their technology might be. So I love to be able to interact with the kids. It gives me such joy, really, to be in front of kids again, because it's not that I miss the paperwork and the day-to-day grind of being with kids, but I love them. I absolutely adore kids, and I love to be around them for their energy and their naivete and their insights and all of those wonderful things that they have to offer.
Fantastic. Well, God willing.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you'll be able to take on, I know you had all sorts of events going on and then had to kind of the great pause, if we want to call it that, the great pause, and get back into that. I've been a teacher for my whole life too, and I always feel like I learn so much from the energy of young people myself.
Yes. It's so
And and while I'm still doing it on Zoom, it's not quite the same energy.
yeah, I mean, I've done some classroom presentations on Zoom, and it's okay. You know, it allows me to do it.
Right.
It's just not the same kind of energy, you know, and having the excitement of having a real bona fide author there in front of them, where they can, you know, feel like, wow, they're in the midst of something really special. It just changes the dynamic of the situation entirely. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to going back.
Aren't we all? That's for sure. Our third author today, Joanne Angel Barry Cologne, wrote Healing with Numbers. Joanne is also a Reiki specialist and a personal fitness trainer, and she is just everything that I need to fix about my own physical life and everything else. And I am so ecstatic to have her on the show. Please welcome Joanne Angel Barry Cologne. Nice to have you.
I am excited to be here. And more importantly, I'm excited to speak about this book. Out of all the books I've written, they were all my favorites, but this one really is a favorite.
Oh, good. Tell us.
Yes, yes. As both Erin and Tanya speak about authenticity and or not being authentic, with the book of Healing with Numbers, my biggest mission and passion for that matter is to help people get into alignment to why they're here on earth and how to understand that sometimes we'll focus on projects that may not be in the alignment to doing at that present time. And we spend a lot of energy doing it. And then it creates frustration because it does not manifest at that time. And when we can really get into that alignment, I like to think that numbers, every number has a specific energy, vibration, and a meaning. And when we can get into the understanding that these numbers provide us wisdom, especially our birthday. And when we speak about the birthday information, there's this thing called the personal energy for the year. And if we literally have an understanding to what our personal energy is for that particular year and what we're meant to be doing in that particular year, we won't feel as though we've been, what's the word I'm looking for, overwhelmed or disappointed. Because we really have an understanding like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. For example, my personal energy for this year is a 3. And in numerology, 3 is about creating, communicating, networking, and coming together with community. And if I am not on track with that energy, I mean, I've been on track with this energy since December 31st, where I'm communicating, I am creating, I've been creating books thanks to you. Every week I'm writing a new submission. And it's like where this information comes from, who knows? It's just being downloaded. But it's because I'm on purpose and I'm on my alignment to what I'm supposed to be doing this year. It's not about necessarily falling in love. It's about creating and maybe healing the falling in love. You know, so when one can really get into alignment to why they're here and how to live on purpose, numbers can be very informative in regards to why one, you know, and we'll use the COVID for that matter, why so many people were impacted by the COVID, whether it be that they actually got the COVID or they lost their job or they were told, you know, we were all told to basically sit home and isolate and stay away from each other. There's a big reason why that took place. And that's leading us to where we're going. And as Erin said about her book, about being authentic, you know, where we always look towards like movie stars on how perfect their life is. Well, we literally got firsthand of what a movie star's life really is because we got to see behind the scenes. No one's life is perfect. And we are allowed to be authentic. We are allowed to know that the cat's going to crawl through. Or as I'm here on this podcast, my father's going to decide to call me. And I'm like, oh, Lord, really? Because this is life. This is life. And it's not about having to put on the mask, so to speak. And it's really funny because we had to wear masks. You know, so when we really think about the whole process of when we can get in alignment to our numbers, we can get a better understanding to what it is we are experiencing and how that experience is actually here to help us heal, whether it's healing a health issue, healing a physical issue, healing your relationship, healing the fact that yeah, like Erin said, working in the corporate world and that didn't serve her anymore, you know, and recognizing that whether we've done something for 30 years of our lives and then all of a sudden there's a pivot and a crossroad that comes in, there's a reason why it's coming in because maybe it's time to shift and move into the purpose. And I do believe that everything we do serves a purpose. There's a reason why we do it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the purpose. And sometimes we take different journeys to get to that place. And once we do get there, then it's like, now I understand what everything behind, what all those other lessons were about that led me to here. So when I think about healing with numbers and coming up with that title, which was like in my head, a no-brainer, it's like numbers heal. Numbers help us to heal. So when we can really get the understanding, here we are in February, the second month of the year, it's a 2. And when we think about the number 2, 2 means a pair, 2 people coming together. And February holds the vibration of, shall we say, love. So yeah, why would we not want to like fall in love with ourselves and then fall in love with other people and bring more love into our relationships, whether it's a business relationship or a relationship that you have with your children, your parents, your friends. And that's the energy that February brings in. And then when we think about the entire year, that 5 energy and how we get a 5 is when you add those numbers, 20, 21, add them up, is a 5. Now it's composed of a 2, 2 2s, a 1, and a 0. And the 2 2s are a representation again, partnerships. The 1, a new way of doing something, being a leader and not always having to wait for the other person to do something. You know, when we think about partnerships, specifically relationships, we're always waiting for the partner to make a choice. And we don't have to do that anymore. We can, as women specifically, we can take the role. So if we want our partner to buy the flowers, why can't we buy our partner the flowers? Take that authentic role, change it up a bit, be different than what we've ever been. And then you got the 0, which works out to the potential and choices that we get to make this year. You know, we get to decide that, well, what worked for us last year? What have we learned about ourselves last year? What hasn't worked in the last, let's say, 50 years? and let's get rid of that and move into this new energy. And when you add up 2021, it works out to be a 5. And in numerology, 5 is about that change that every one of us are being, I'm not going to say forced, but I'm going to say inspired to do, is change the way we are living, change the way we are working, change the way we are showing up in the world, and be authentic. Show up if you want to wear the red, vibrant red hair like me, with the pink vest and the orange background. Show up authentic. Why does it have to be so clean and proper? And then that will allow us to have the freedom that we're all looking for. We're all looking for freedom, but not many of us are looking to do the changes to get to that freedom. And this year, I totally believe 2021 is going to be a lot different than 2020. And what's that?
I said, we hope so.
Yeah. And I have a mantra for this year specifically, and that is go big or go home. Because we need to step into those big shoes that we are here to fill and live the authentic life we're supposed to live and start healing ourselves authentically. And then as we heal ourselves, everything externally will start to heal because we're learning how to live in the alignment to what we're here to do. So the next time any of us look at numbers again, perhaps you might look at those numbers a little differently. And also numbers that repeat themselves. Like when you see numbers, random numbers that might show up, like you might look at the clock and see that number 222. And it's not just about 222. It's about that number saying, have faith in the partnerships that you are building, because those partnerships are going to heal when you transform that new foundation. And it's a big message, but when you really can get the understanding of how numbers pop up and why they may show up all the time, or why you might be woken at the weirdest hours of night, there's messages in those numbers. And my whole mission with this book is to get people to see numbers in a different point. And I want to make a note here. As Erin was really great at math, I completely sucked at math. I mean, really, I hated math. I mean, putting numbers together. And I mean, when I was in high school, I would get up early in the morning to have to go to tutoring class for math in order to pass my math class. And here I am today talking about numbers on a totally different level, because it's not about numbers. It's about the energy and the vibration, and how these numbers, when we can really pay attention to them, how they can give us some significant meanings and understanding to what we're experiencing in our everyday life, and how they can transform our lives so we can be authentic, transparent, and transform to being the best version of who we are.
Fantastic. And you know what I love that you said, and all of you women on this today are such examples of this, that if you're not in alignment with what you should be doing at a particular time, that you might feel blocked, that it's just not happening in that way. And I sometimes say that with writers I'm working with. If you're working on, I'll have writers who are writing more than one book at a time, because it's just not the time to do that. I think that Tanya might be writing more than one book at a time. Am I right?
No,
And that's
never do it. Never.
That's exactly what it is that we get so caught up in what's in our head, that it has to be this way. And especially when we talk about relationships, most women, I don't know about men, but most women always want to be in a relationship. They want to find that love. And sometimes it's just not the energy for it, that your energy should be writing that book and spending that time in that book energy, as opposed to putting yourself out there to meet people. It's just not the energy. I can't tell you how many women have gone on these dating sites during COVID, and they were not very successful. And one of the reasons, when I looked at their personal energy for the year, I'm like, well, because in your energy, it's not meant for you to be in a relationship this year. The relationship you need to be with is yourself, and what your purpose is. You need to flourish that purpose this year, get to know who you are. And then once you know who you are and flourish your purpose, then the external relationship will fall into place. And it's not an easy process for women. And I speak on women because I spend a lot of time with them. It's not an easy process for them to understand, well, what do you mean it's not my time to be in a relationship? It's not. It's time for you to be in a relationship with you, fall in love with you, fall in love with what you're here to do. And then once you get all that in order, then Mr. Prince or Miss Charming or whatever we want to call it will come in alignment. And I truly do believe that if every one of us get in a habit of looking at numbers and learning what our personal energy is for the year, it will definitely help us to be in alignment to the things we're supposed to actually be doing every year. And our personal energy year changes every year based on the energy of that year. Just so everyone will understand that every year we'll have a different theme and a different process that we're supposed to be going through. So if, let's say, hypothetically, 2020 was not the year to meet your prince, 2021 might be. So.
Although I do wonder how people were on dating sites and meeting strangers during COVID. That whole thing seems like an oxymoron to me, but I digress. I often, and I'm like you with, you're saying numbers, I would often have a word of the year, and my word for this year, and I copied it from last year because I liked it so much last year, was intentional. That I wanted to do things intentionally, to actually plan on something. But I love that you mentioned it's February and we have a whole year ahead of you. What about the future? What projects do you each have for the future? Erin, what are you doing next?
It's so funny. Well, a couple of things. One, my next big nugget is a research project. So I'm not a research person, but I hopefully we'll be partnering up with our local university. I want to do really the first ever research project on the impact of authenticity in the workplace. And the reason I laughed too, again, here's this non-writer girl. The week before my launch, this is so me, I went and secured the domain of the name of the next book I think I want to write. So writing another book, but not quite so quickly. This one I did in 10 months from start to launch. I'd like to spend a little more time in this next one, a little more research. But yeah, the other big thing is probably working on book number 2 as well.
Fantastic. I have to admit, every single author I work with, as soon as the first book is launched, it takes less than 2 weeks for them to say to me, so I'm thinking about book number 2. It's addicting. It's absolutely addicting. Tanya, how about you? What does 2021 hold for you?
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting year. I have the sequel to Rising Up that is in the editing process right now. The book is called Facing Off. It's an amazing book, just so full of twists and turns and cool things that happen to these characters as they kind of fight back against the expectations of their society. So that is still I'm working through that, and I've already started writing book number 3. So no, I'm not writing 2 books at one time, but I'll be doing a little bit of each one as I go forward here. So yeah, so I'm pretty excited about the future, and this series is going to be super fun.
Well, I do know authors who, if they're in multiple genres, they might have their mystery series and their romance series or whatever, and they might overlap writing of them, or even fiction and nonfiction, depending on which way the wind blows. Joanne, how about you? What does 2021 hold?
Well, as I mentioned, I'm in a 3 energy year, so it really is about creating, communicating, networking. And prior to the show today, I actually was on your page and took a look at all the new books, all the new titles that you've just posted today. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this one. I'm going to do this one. I'm going to do this one. So yeah, I have a whole lot of writing I'll be doing over the next couple of months. So I look forward to seeing what unfolds in 2021 that hasn't already unfolded, because there's a lot that has.
Fantastic, fantastic. I'm going to pull up that page just for any one of our viewers that don't know. At Red Penguin, we have an anthology series called the Red Penguin Collection. And twice a month, we publish a new book on a different topic, and we invite authors, poets, and playwrights from around the world to participate. So we've published, goodness, I think it's 11 books since September. Some of them are poetry, some of them science fiction, travel, romance, mystery, and you are absolutely welcome to join us in this fun publishing project. Just visit redpenguinbooks.com. This is on our upcoming publications. At the top are the books that we've already published, and then coming up are all the ones that are coming up. Like Joanne mentioned, we just filled up this whole schedule from now through August. So all of the submission deadlines are here and what books are coming up. So Roaring Twenties, nature poetry, monologues, fantasy, mystery, do-it-yourself, self-help books, children's books, historical fiction, hot romance, one-act plays, summer poetry, and supernatural short stories. So if you are a fiction writer or nonfiction, these can go either way, and we do short stories, poems, and short dramatic pieces. Please join us in this. And I know Joanne has got a whole bunch of stuff submitted, as we have writers from all over the world participating in this. So it's a lot of fun, and it's a great way to get those creative juices going. So I just want to remind our viewers where they can find you and who should be looking. So Erin, tell us a little bit about who is going to go right over to beauthenticinc.com when this show is over.
Yeah, if you're in the corporate world and feeling at all frustrated that you can't get where you want to go, you need an energy boost, you're looking for a different strategy to succeed in your career and, like I said, in your life as well, then I'm pretty sure you'll want to check out You Do You-ish.
I love it. Well, you know, I'm not a corporate girl myself, but I want to You Do You-ish myself. So
go for it.
Absolutely. Whether you're corporate or like me, I've never been in the corporate world because I run my own thing here, but I definitely want to do me-ish. That's for sure. So thank you so much, Erin. And I do want to, if you could send us a link to that TEDx talk, I would love to as well. That was great. Tanya, tell us who should be going to TanyaRossAuthor.com.
Well, my book is written for young adults, anywhere from 13 to 18, but I read a lot of young adult fiction myself. I think that this book and the entire series is going to be of interest to anybody that likes like a dystopian type of book. So I just encourage you to go read it. It's a really fun read, and yeah, it's just only going to get better from here.
I am so glad that you opened it beyond, when you said that, beyond just the young adults. I love YA literature.
I do too.
You know, not for nothing, the biggest sellers as far as fiction books and movies. I mean, let's talk Hunger Games, Harry Potter. You know, these are all things that were intended for younger audiences, but obviously have wide appeal.
Right.
So I'm really glad that you said that. And this is for all readers who want to kind of go into a fantasy world, but see a piece of themselves while they're there.
Absolutely. Yeah, you'll love the heroes of the book. They are very inspiring.
Fantastic. And Joanne, who should be grabbing a copy of Healing with Numbers and visiting you at holisticfitnessny.com?
I would say anybody that can read. Yeah, anyone that can read, anyone that's looking to sort of figure things out, see where they are in their world, what they're supposed to be doing, how numbers work for them. I think this book is for everybody, and anyone who just is curious to know numbers in a different way other than just math.
Well, that's good, because a lot of us are not as good at math as Erin is. So, hey.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great information in this book that's going to definitely help the reader get in alignment to what it is they're looking to accomplish, and even possibly find out something about themselves they didn't already know. I like to say maybe that little mystery about themselves, because again, when we think about being authentic or not authentic, sometimes many of us sort of walk our journey based on what we were told we should be doing. You know, where I can't tell you how many students end up going to law school who don't want to be lawyers, but because their parents thought they'd be a great lawyer, and there they are in law school. So picking up this book might actually turn around and say, this is why I didn't like law. It doesn't align with me. Maybe I need to figure out what does. So why not?
Fantastic. And if all three of you would please do me a favor and send me, I know Erin, you're going to send me the video, but any other links, events, and things that I can share with our audiences so they can keep in touch with you. And since you all have new books coming out, I want to see you back here on Between the Covers when the next book comes out.
Sounds good. Thank
Will
you.
do. Will do.
Thanks for joining us, and thanks to our audience, and happy reading and happy writing.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Oh, you were all fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. It was so nice to meet you guys. I've already got ideas. I'm going to order the books for different people. So
Absolutely. They sound amazing.
To any,
Yes, they do.
that would be great. Thank you so much. And stay well in the storms, except for Tanya, who's just going to the beach later.
It's great here.
Great, ladies. Have a great weekend.
Nice meeting you all. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on Between the Covers. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're an author who would be interested in appearing on our show, or perhaps you're a member of a book club, we do host book clubs as well, please visit BetweenTheCoversTV.com. By the way, at BetweenTheCoversTV.com, you can watch past episodes in addition to learning more about our authors and guests. So sign up there if you would like to be a guest on the show yourself. And if you have some books that you would like to get written or published, visit redpenguinbooks.com. Thanks so much for joining us.